February 2008. I'm still working at Norlake Manufacturing, still living in North Ridgeville, Ohio, and still reading some books. And that's what we're here to talk about. So, the first book that I read in February of 2008, let's just make sure, is Dark Hollow by Brian Keene, leisure paperback. This is the leisure paperback mass market reprinting of The Rutting Season. I don't think there's any difference between if you had like the hardback, The Rutting Season, Dark Hollow paperback. I don't know that there's any difference in the books, but this is about Adam Senft, an up and coming writer, and he lives by Lahorn's Hollow, where there is some strange piping music, and according to this, women are vanishing without a trace, and just weird stuff happening. I don't want to give anything away. If you've watched all the other earlier Reading Remembrances videos, not too long ago, I talked about The Rutting Season. But it's Brian Keene. It's good stuff. There is something very, very personal to Brian Keene that is represented in here. I'm 99% sure, based on reading some of his nonfiction stuff, and something he talked about there seems to be reflected in here. I suppose that's neither here nor there. But anyway, Brian Keene, The Dark Hollow, great book. Next up, The Night Walker by Thomas Tessier, or Tessier. This was also a leisure book. I think it was a leisure copy that I read. This is essentially a werewolf novel. Our main character is Bobby Ives. He's in London. He has the urge to kill, but we don't really see him turn into a werewolf. There's something going on. Is he physically changing into a werewolf? Is it just a weird impulse to kill that's making him behave monstrously? Well, you'll have to read the book to find out. I had to look this up, and according to one of the reviews that I read on Amazon, there's a second story in the book, but I don't recall, not about the werewolf guy, not about Bobby Ives. I don't recall if that story is in the leisure edition or the edition I read, or if it's just in the new edition. Maybe it always goes anytime The Nightwalker is published. This other story, which I guess is a psychological horror story, goes with it. I can't say. But Nightwalker, Thomas Tessier, may or may not be a werewolf novel. After that, we have The Bride of Trash by Mike Segretto. This is a horror comedy. Our main character's name is Whizzer Whale. And out behind his junk shop in the trash, the difference between trash and junk, I don't know, but he finds a headless corpse, the headless corpse of a woman whom he makes his girlfriend. And he names her Elsa after his dead wife. And Elsa has murderous impulses, which is going to lead to all sorts of shenanigans. And there's all sorts of people that are now after Elsa, and I suppose after Whizzer. But this is got a thumbs up or whatever from Herschel Gordon Lewis. So if you're a fan of Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, then you might be a fan of The Bride of Trash by Mike Segretto. And then the penultimate book that I read in February of 2008, Gossamer Hall by Aaron Samiloglu. Samiloglu. No idea how to pronounce that. And this is from Medallion Press. In some of the earlier Reading Remembrances videos, I was trying to remember. There was a publisher I was starting to buy their books and read their books. And I thought for a moment it was Pinnacle, but that seemed too obvious. It's Medallion. But what we have here is Juan Fuentes, and he has the ability to make objects appear from nowhere and bring back the dead. That's where the trouble's going to happen, because one of his college professors wants to have a seance to contact this 19th century killer, and things happen that cause 4 19th century serial killers to come back to life, and now they're trying to kill all of the students in Gossamer Hall. So you've got this crazy supernatural element that leads to sort of a slasher type story. And that's Gossamer Hall by Aaron Samiloglu. Whatever it is. And then the final book that I read in February of 2008 is Rapture by Thomas Tessier, or Tessier. Not this copy. This didn't exist back in 2008. I believe it was another leisure book. And in this, we have a guy named Jeff who's in love with Georgie Ann. And it says, Jeff loves Georgie Ann. Jeff has always loved Georgie Ann. Now, years later, Georgie Ann is as beautiful, as magical as ever, and ripe for terror. Because Jeff is a psychotic stalker. Because a love like Jeff's makes a man crazy. He'll do things he'd never have dreamed possible. Even target, stalk, and possibly destroy everyone Georgie Ann loves. Her faithful husband, her attractive teenage daughter. Until Jeff is all she has left. So some crazy psychological horror from Thomas Tessier. Seems quite good at that. And this is one of 2 that have been reprinted by the Paperbacks from Hell. And it's pretty good stuff. And I read 2 of his books in February of 2008. And that's it. That is everything that I read in February 2008. Still not a lot. Only 5 books this time. And as usual, did not think of a question ahead of time. So let's go with, do you pay attention to publishers? And if so, do you have any favorite publishers? I think it seems obvious that I do try to pay attention to publishers. Regular viewers will know all of this. When I discovered Brian Keene on the release day of the leisure paperback copy of The Rising, I paid attention. I realized, leisure books. Let me check out what else they've got. And again, if you've watched these videos, you can see tons and tons of leisure books being read, being purchased. I have a ton of leisure books over on, there's a shelf over here, and all of my Sarah Pinborough leisure books are there. All of my Brian Smith leisure books are there. And then there's some others, my Jack Ketchum's, some John Skip, Maynard and Sims. All my Brian Keene leisure stuff is up in the Brian Keene section. And there's probably other leisure books scattered about. And then Medallion. Once I realized that I was reading these, I read some books from Medallion. I started looking for their stuff. Not as hardcore a fan as I was of leisure. Nowadays, so many small presses that I love. Ghoulish, and nothing else that's coming to mind. Bad Hand Books, and of course Tor Nightfire. I have almost everything that from the Tor Nightfire imprint. Few exceptions I've talked about before. Titan Books. A big fan of a lot of the stuff that they're doing. They're doing Alien and Aliens novels. They're doing the Conan and Robert E. Howard stuff. They're sort of expanding. Next year is going to be a Solomon Kane novel. I'm very excited for that. Valancourt, who published the Paperbacks from Hell series, as well as reprinting a lot of old stuff that doesn't fit into the paperbacks from hell necessarily. And actually, if you watch the weekly wrap up that just posted this past Sunday, you're going to see some Valancourt stuff. But yeah, so I do like to pay attention to publishers. They're not necessarily going to put out, I'm not going to love everything that a certain publisher puts out. As I said, with Tor Nightfire, they've reprinted some Brian Lumley stuff. I'm not a fan of Brian Lumley, so I didn't pick it up. But tons and tons of their authors I've never read before, but I trust Tor Nightfire enough that I will pick them up and give them a try. I miss leisure books, and I don't know if there's currently, off the top of my head, a publisher that's doing what Leisure did. I would love to have another Leisure or Zebra mass market. I hate to say trashy, because that's not really the best descriptive, but pulpy horror maybe is the way to go. Flame Tree Press, another one. And they publish a lot of authors that were there was I shouldn't say a lot, but a lot of authors that would be published by, I think, Leisure, if Leisure were still around. Anyway, what about you? Do you follow any particular publishers? What are your favorites? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Blue Sky in the description below. That's all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.